Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. I'm a general physician. Today we'll be talking on one of the very interesting topic which you will see almost every day in and out such cases, that is anemia. How you approach to a person with anemia. Basically, anemia is your clinical finding. It is not a disease. It is one condition where there is a pale, your hemoglobin is reduced, and there are many conditions which produces anemia. So you will have to find out what is the cause of anemia and then treat accordingly, because all anemia are not iron deficiency anemia. Remember that for lifetime. So we'll be discussing under how you suspect, and for suspicion you require history, physical examination, systemic examination, investigations which should include CBC plus peripheral smear and other, depending upon what you come to the nearmost diagnosis for differential diagnosis, and then how you approach to individual anemia and treatment part of anemias and complications. So first is history and physical examination is a must. That is how you suspect a patient and how you get a history and you try to identify what is the most common cause of anemia in that patient, and you can put a differential diagnosis. Then to confirm that person has got anemia and what is the differentiation of anemia on the ground of CBC, you will be asking for a laboratory investigations. And in that laboratory investigation, the most common first is CBC, second common is your peripheral smear. And then depending upon your clinical differential diagnosis, you will be asking for additional investigations. Say you are suspecting iron deficiency anemia, you will be going for iron studies like TIBC, ferritin level, etc. Iron levels. Say you are suspecting megaloblastic anemia, so we will go for B12 level and folic acid level accordingly. And then you will decide what management to be done and what could be the complication of management and complication of the disease itself. But never ask for complete blood count at first shot and then evaluate the patient. First, always evaluate the patient, have a good physical examination and a good medical history, and then go for a complete blood count. Not CBC first, then you evaluate on the ground of CBC. It is a wrong technique. So the commonest symptoms and signs due to anemia itself, maybe because of any etiology, maybe iron deficiency anemia, maybe because of blood loss, megaloblastic, or maybe hemolytic anemia, or maybe because of bone marrow failure, or maybe a chronic cause, or malignancy, anything. But the symptoms of all anemia remains nearly same, except there are few symptoms and signs which are additional finding which gives you a clue that probably this is the cause for anemia. So the commonest symptoms and signs which you come across initially is pallor, anorexia, irritability. This irritability is probably because of hypoxia, because when a person gets anemia, he develops lack of oxygen supply. And as the anemia increases, now person will start getting palpitation, shortness of breath, easy fatigue, leg cramps, weakness, and reduced exercise tolerance. On examination, you will get pallor. Very frequently, you will see angular stomatitis, glossitis. Koilonychia and platynachia is very common in iron deficiency anemia. You may not get this finding in other varieties. So common symptoms, if you get any one of these symptoms, you suspect anemia. Lack of concentration, repeated infection, palpitation, dizziness, weakness, fatigue, irritability, etc. These are common symptoms. There are many more symptoms. And some of the clinical findings: pallor of skin and mucous membrane. You can get an ejection systolic murmur, very nicely heard in a pulmonary area. You will have a tachycardia. You will see pallor in skin and mucous membrane. You can get edema because of associated hypoproteinemia. You can have glossitis, stomatitis. You can have a platinacea, koilonychia. This will be a common finding in case of iron deficiency anemia. You will see a pallor very clearly in a pharyngeal mucosa or in a oral mucosa. You can get, so you can have a white lines, brittle nails, koilonychia, pallor, angular stomatitis or chelosis. You can clearly identify this pallor. You can have jaundice, and jaundice will be a feature in a case of a hemolytic anemias, dizziness, headache, lack of concentration, anorexia, etc. These are all the findings. You can see the angular stomatitis, pallor. So right from here, you can have any particular symptoms. Usually, you will come across yellowish discoloration in a case of what we call as a hemolytic anemias. Skin, pallor, coldness, and yellowish discoloration in case of hemolytic. Inner respiratory system, shortness of breath. As far as skeletal muscles are concerned, weakness, fatigue, leg cramps. In GI tract, stool color will change, particularly in a person who is having a blood loss. He can have frank bleeding per rectum, we call hematochezia, or he can have a dark tarry stool, black dark tarry stool, which we call as melena. So that can be there very frequently. Or even sometime person can tell you that he is passing worms, because worm infestation in India is a very common cause for iron deficiency anemia. As far as CNS is concerned, fatigue, dizziness, and if anemia is very severe, he can get even fainting attacks. As far as blood pressure is concerned, he might have a little amount of hypotension. In cardiovascular system, palpitation, tachycardia, and when the anemia is very severe, you can get chest pain, particularly anginal chest pain, and once in a while it can even precipitate acute MI. On examination, you can have a splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, etc. And hepatomegaly and splenomegaly is very common in myelodysproliferative disorders, myelodysplasia, or we call myeloproliferative disorders, in hemolytic anemias, and also in case of leukemias. In those cases, you will have a hepatosplenomegaly, you can have a lymphadenopathy also, particularly in a case of a lymphatic leukemia and lymphomas, which can be associated with anemias. So these are all the symptom signs which you can come across. You can see here person can have fatigue, koilonychia, classical spoon shape. You can see this spoon shape neck, pallor. You can see in conjunctiva, you can see in a skin. You can have a hepatosplenomegaly, delayed milestone, and along with that delayed milestone, if there is an organ megaly, particularly spleen is very big, liver is very big, you can suspect hemolytic anemia. And see in this peripheral smear, these are called target cells. So if you see a target cells, it is characteristic of thalassemia. So do keep it in mind. So you can have a thalassemia, very common. See jaundice. Jaundice will be a finding in a person particularly with a hemolytic anemia, and another finding which you can come across in a hemolytic, which is usually one of the common cause is hereditary, and that is splenomegaly, hepatomegaly. So if you get a hepatosplenomegaly with jaundice, with anemia, always suspect hemolytic anemias. So hepatosplenomegaly, jaundice, you can suspect. If you get a multiple gallstone, particularly pigmentary gallstones, and with hepatosplenomegaly, again it favors hemolytic anemias. If you come across a typical described, it is called as a ruddy face. where there is a lot of flushing of the face and person has got little amount of this discoloration with splenomegaly, very big splenomegaly. Suspect polycythemia rubra vera. These are all other additional symptoms which we can come across because of tissue hypoxia. That is in a brain, somnolence, easy fatigability. In heart, work capacity is decreased, tachycardia, shortness of breath, and you can have even a symptom signs of congestive heart failure. In a lung, dyspnea, SOB, shortness of breath, and person will have a tachypnea. In skeletal muscle, weakness, fatigue, etc. All these symptoms are all because of decreased carrying capacity of blood because of anemia. Oxygen carrying capacity is markedly reduced, and that will produce tissue hypoxia. And these are all the other symptoms which you can come across, and that are multiple symptoms. As far as cognitive function is concerned, diminished concentration, disturbances in perception, disturbances in learning process. Also, person will start having irregular menstrual period, low pregnancy iron stores, low birth weight babies, preterm deliveries, etc. can be the effect of secondary due to anemia, and person will have a decreased work output, decreased capacity. All those can be a finding because of a chronic anemia. And secondary to chronic anemia, you can have a peripheral vasodilatation, fall in blood pressure, secretion of a neurohormones we call particularly catecholamine, activation of RAS system, natriuretic peptide will be secreted, ANP, AVP will be also secreted, antidiuretic hormone, renal blood flow will be reduced, increase cardiac volumes, extracellular volume will increase, hence you will have a edema, and plasma volume is also increased, increased workload, cardiomegaly, LV remodeling, LV dysfunction, and person can also have a congestive heart failure, or if already he is having, he can have a worsening of heart failure. These are all because of a chronic severe anemia. Now once clinically you suspect that person is having anemia, again if you require, re-evaluate the history, try to go for the clinical findings, and from the history if possibility of a etiology, and then you can go for investigations. In investigation, first important is what we call as a complete blood count, CBC. That is hemoglobin with a blood count. We call total blood count, or we call as a CBC, etc. And that should be also associated with a retic count, because this is very, very important. Just reduction in hemoglobin is not the diagnosis of anemia. For diagnosis of anemia, you have to have a decreased hematocrit, decrease hemoglobin, and decrease in hemoglobin concentration in RBC, and decrease RBC count. When all these things are together, then only you can label that as anemia. So if a person has got decreased RBC count, decreased PEC cell volume, and decreased hemoglobin, those three things together confirms the diagnosis of anemia. And if there is increased retic count, so whenever the retic count is elevated along with anemia, it indicates the marrow is functioning. At least it rules out a bone marrow failure. So retic count is very important to differentiate certain anemias. So if retic count is very, very low and person has got pancytopenia, anemia, thrombocytopenia and leukopenia, along with very low retic count or almost zero retic count, it indicates a bone marrow failure, or we call as a group of aplastic anemia or a bone marrow failure cases. But suppose if the retic count is very high and person has got anemia, think in terms of an increased bone marrow function. Classical example is hemolytic anemias. That is one of the commonest cause of increased retic count. So do look for a hemolytic groups of anemias. And then from MCV and MCHC, mean corpuscular volume and mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration, try to identify microcytic, macrocytic, normocytic, and then depending upon the hemoglobin concentration, hypochromic, normochromic. Very rarely you will come across hyperchromic anemias. And hematocrit will also help you to identify whether the person has got a RBC mass which is less. So all these are important, and from this particular you can come to the most closest differential diagnosis of anemia. And peripheral smear helps you a lot. In some other lecture we'll be discussing only on a peripheral smear, and you will understand how peripheral smear can help you to come to the closest diagnosis. So try to look for that. Red blood cell distribution width is also very important, because it will be elevated in case of an iron deficiency anemia, and it is very less in a case of a thalassemia. Spectrophotometry is useful whenever you are suspecting hemoglobinopathies, particularly congenital hemoglobinopathies, and that particular is responsible for hemolytic anemia. In that case, spectrophotometry and electrophoresis is very important. Bone marrow examination is important to differentiate failure of bone marrow or bone marrow is functioning, hypercellular or hypocellular, or almost bone marrow is replaced by fibrous tissue. That you can examine by doing a bone marrow examination, that is bone marrow aspiration, or we call bone marrow biopsy. X-rays of bones is very important in a hemolytic anemia to find out the peculiar X-ray pictures of skull as well as chest, that is ribs, etc. Endoscopic examination is useful to find out upper GI endoscopy or colonoscopy. It is useful to find out a chronic blood loss. Ultrasound is useful to find out hepatosplenomegaly, portal hypertension, which is one of the very common cause for blood loss. And colonoscopy is useful to find out a lower GI tract blood loss. You can go for an occult blood examination in stool to find out a chronic blood loss. So CBC, stool hemoglobin test, or we call occult blood test, very useful. Peripheral blood smear, because this is useful to find out a chronic blood loss, which is a very common cause for deficiency anemia, particularly iron deficiency anemia. Peripheral blood smear will be very helpful to differentiate a good number of different types of anemias. And when you suspect clinically iron deficiency anemia, go for iron level, transferrin and ferritin level, and TIBC level. If you are suspecting megaloblastic anemia, folate level and B12 levels. In case of hemolytic anemia, serum bilirubin total, indirect, direct, as well as SGPT. And if required, you can go for alkaline phosphatase and GGT, etc. If you get in a peripheral smear basophil stippling, you can go for a lead toxicity studies. You can go for an electrophoresis, particularly whenever you are suspecting hemolytic anemias, to rule out hemoglobinopathies. In that particular condition, reticulocyte count will be markedly elevated, and you will see that it suggests that person is having increased bone marrow function, and bone marrow biopsy will show you hypercellular bone marrow. Liver function test and renal function test will help you to rule out a chronic disorders which produces chronic anemias. So it is a disorders, chronic disorders. And bone marrow biopsy will be very helpful in a case where the person is having a bone marrow failure, or it is a hypocellular, or it is a total bone marrow failure where it is replaced by a fibrous tissue, and myelodysplastic disorders. All those conditions you can identify by doing a bone marrow biopsy, or we call bone marrow aspirations. So individual investigations are sometimes needed whenever you are suspecting some disease, either by CBC or by a peripheral smear or by a clinical examination. And then you can go for all these investigations, different investigations. I've mentioned few of the common indications in which condition you go for that. This is what we do in what we call as CBC. RBC count, hemoglobin, hematocrit, red blood cell indices like RDW, MCV, MCH, MCHC, and reticulocyte count. So these are all the things which are being done to identify the red cell morphology. So whenever you want, you have to have a red blood cell count, hemoglobin concentration, hematocrit, RDW, MCV, MCHC, then MCH and reticulocyte count. All this has to be done, and together you can differentiate a good number of disorders which produces anemia. You can suspect and you can find out what type of anemia person is having. So hemoglobin will give you an idea only regarding a person is having anemia or not. And also it will give you an idea if the hemoglobin is markedly elevated. Say hemoglobin is 20, 22, 23, 24. It will be in favor of a polycythemia. So that will be one of the very useful things when you estimate hemoglobin. Hematocrit gives you an idea regarding, it will help you to differentiate a condition where the RBC mass is increased or RBC mass is decreased. RBC mass, that is PEC cell volume, and hematocrit, both are same. The terms are different, hematocrit or we call PEC cell volume, and that will be markedly increased in case of a polycythemia rubra vera or even in a case of a secondary polycythemia. Sometimes it is falsely elevated in a person who has got a severe dehydration. Why? Hematocrit will be markedly reduced if the RBC mass is less, particularly in a deficiency anemia, iron deficiency anemia. It will be markedly reduced. Also in case of an acute blood loss, you will have a decreased hematocrit. Also hematocrit may be markedly reduced if the person has got a fluid volume overload, congestive heart failure, hypoproteinemia, etc. Now suppose clinically if you are suspecting iron deficiency anemia, or if the person is having microcytic hypochromic, you will suspect iron deficiency anemia or thalassemia trait, and then you will try to differentiate those two by doing iron studies. You will look at the RBC indices and try to classify them into microcytic, hypochromic, macrocytic, hypochromic, normocytic, normochromic, etc. In all those groups, you will try to differentiate by using MCV and MCH. So try to identify those two. So you look at the MCV and MCH and try to identify the different groups. So also look for the hemolytic anemias group. So you look at the hemoglobin, retic count, different indices, particularly MCV and MCH, and try to put them into a different types of group. Look at also red cell distribution width. Peripheral smear is absolutely necessary in a case of anemia. It gives you a lot of ideas. And then you can go for a special investigations like bone marrow examination, electrophoresis, iron studies, etc. depending upon the suspected etiology. Usually this is a very simple algorithm which you follow whenever you want to approach to an anemia. Look at CBC and RBC count. CBC tells you hemoglobin low. Say retic count is less than 2.5 or more than 2.5. And depending upon the indices, we put them into normocytic, microcytic or macrocytic. So in that particular, you utilize what we call MCV and MCH. And depending upon that, we put them into three big groups. Where retic count is less, either it is a normochromic normocytic or microcytic or macrocytic. And if there is a retic count which is very high, one big group separate, we call as a hemolytic anemias. And in that hemolytic anemia, it can be because of a chronic blood loss, intravascular hemolysis, metabolic defects, membrane abnormality, hemoglobinopathies, immune destruction, or fragmented hemolysis. Lot of different conditions which can produce hemolysis or hemorrhage. So Hemolytic anemias and hemorrhage will always have increased retic count. So whenever the retic count is very high, suspect hemolysis or hemorrhage. In hemorrhage, you don't come across jaundice, while in case of hemolysis, you will come across jaundice. In hemolytic jaundice, invariably on a clinical finding, you will have a hepatosplenomegaly, very, very common. And you will have a even change in the shape, we call shape of the face, that is chipmunk face, typical face you will have. And that is characteristic in a case of a hemolytic jaundice, or we call it a hemolytic anemia. So jaundice, hepatosplenomegaly, change in the facial shapes. Also, if the person has got recurrent episodes, strong family history, all goes in favor of hemolytic anemia. While hemorrhage can be intra or extra. So we call, when there is an external bleeding, the person will be clinically presenting in a form of a hemoptysis, hematemesis, hematochezia, metromenorrhagia, etc. But in a case of an internal bleeding, person may not be aware of it, and person can have a massive bleeding inside the abdominal cavity, in the stomach, or in the GI tracts. That is the most common cause of bleeding, and usually very common another condition where the person is having a very gradual small quantity of a blood loss, either from upper GI tract or from a lower GI tract. So you must keep that thing in mind. While all these other conditions, that is intravascular hemolysis or extravascular hemolysis, and that will produce a classical hemolytic anemia. And almost in majority of this condition, you will have a hepatosplenomegaly and jaundice. That are the common features. So you can differentiate. So any person who has got an increased retic count, look for two common conditions. If the retic count is low, less than 2.5, then you can look for normocytic normochromic or microcytic hypochromic or macrocytic hypochromic. So try to look for those conditions. In a normocytic normochromic, usually the bone marrow is hypoproliferative, while here the maturation disorders are there. And in this particular condition, you can look for chronic disorders and iron deficiency anemia. So in an iron deficiency anemia, bone marrow failure, retic count will be markedly low. So if retic count is low, person is having clinically koilonychia, platynachia, glossitis, angular stomatitis, difficulty in swallowing, all those things which is suggestive of iron deficiency anemia, do study for iron deficiency anemia. Second common group which will produce normocytic normochromic is we call as a bone marrow infiltration or aplastic anemia. In that, bone marrow biopsy is absolutely necessary to differentiate from other conditions. And in this particular conditions, bone marrow disorders, you will have a pancytopenia, additional feature which you don't come across in other varieties of anemia. So if anytime if you see a pancytopenia with severe anemia and retic count is markedly low, do suspect a bone marrow disorders and do a bone marrow biopsy, or we call a bone marrow aspiration, and try to find out whether it is because of infiltration or it is because of aplastic anemia or because of bone marrow failure. And also, good number of times you can come across a similar disorder, that is normocytic normochromic with a very low retic count, and bone marrow will be hypoproliferative, or we call as a hypocellular bone marrow, that is in a chronic disorders, particularly CKD, renal disease, particularly CKD. So do keep it in mind. While if a person who comes across a folic acid or B12 deficiency, you will have a macrocytic anemia. So MCV will be more than 100. Suspect folic acid or B12 deficiency. And once in a while, you come across an iron deficiency anemia, which will be basically microcytic hypochromic anemia. And in that particular, you will have a lot amount of other clinical findings like koilonychia, platynachia, glossitis, angular stomatitis, difficulty in swallowing, Plummer-Vinson syndromes, etc. So you will have to differentiate that by doing what we call as the iron studies. So look for that iron studies, and for thalassemia you will require electrophoresis to identify that, and sideroblastic anemia you will be able to identify by doing a good peripheral smear which will show a sideroblast, and additionally by doing what we call as the iron level studies will help you to differentiate iron deficiency, thalassemia, sideroblastic anemias and chronic disorders also. So try to look for that accordingly. This is a standard what we call as normal laboratory parameters: hemoglobin, hematocrit, RBC count, three common in a normal person. Less than this, we go in favor of an anemia. There are certain figures depending upon the what criteria you are utilizing. Accordingly, you can put them into mild, moderate, and severe. And then these are the WBC count, MCV, MCH, MCHC, and RDW. So these are already mentioned in your reports. So look at that properly. Now these two slides are very, very useful. Whether your report is valid or not valid. In a normal person, RBC count is usually close to 5 million. We call between 4 to 6. Multiply by 3, 5 multiplied by 3 is 15. So hemoglobin concentration normal is around 15. Range is from 12 to 17. So we call 5 multiplied by 3. 5 multiplied by 3 is B, that is hemoglobin. Hemoglobin multiplied by 3 is hematocrit. That is 15 multiplied by 3, that is 45 is a hematocrit. This is a rule of thumb what we call. So 5, 15 and 45. 5 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3 makes you RBC count, hemoglobin and hematocrit. If this is roughly close to that, the laboratory report is consistent. And if it does not matches, try to find out what is the fault. Usually RBC count should be between 4 to 6. Hemoglobin should be more than 3 times multiplied by 3. And hematocrit should be close to 45. So try to look at that. So this particular checks whether this holds good in a given result. So you've got one CBC report. Try to calculate this. So it will give you an idea. If not, it indicates if it is not fitting with that, it does not fit with this, then it indicates microcytic or macrocytic or hypochromic anemias. So microcytic hypochromic or macrocytic hypochromic groups of anemias. So in that, this will not tell. So try to look for that. 3 indices. Now we have already told you. Now if you want to calculate MCV, MCV should be hematocrit, that is C divided by A. So 45 divided by 5 multiplied by 10. So that makes 90. So MCV should be 90 femtoliters. MCH is B divided by A multiplied by 10. So 15 divided by 3, 5 is equal to 3. So that should be close to 30. And MCHC should be B divided by C, 15 divided by 45 multiplied by 100, that is 33%. So if you remember this, it will be very, very helpful. Depends how you remember. Now see this particular conditions. Now this is a normal person where hematocrit, if you see, it is 45. Now in this particular, blood volume has remained same. Now hematocrit, or what we call PEC cell volume, is reduced, meaning RBC mass is reduced. So RBC count will be low, hemoglobin will be low, and hematocrit will be low. So it will fit with this. RBC count will be low. Because RBC count is low, hemoglobin will be also low, and hematocrit is low. So it will fit exactly with that. But in this particular condition, you can see that here, if you draw a line like this, the blood volume has increased, and blood volume increases in pregnancy, person with a large spleen, person with a increased immunoglobulins, also person with a large fluid volume overloads like congestive heart failures, fluid retentions, etc. Where RBC mass has remained same, but compared to the blood volume, the PEG cell volume will become low, and this will give you a false interpretation of anemia. RBC mass is adequate, but that will give you a false interpretation. Do keep it in mind. Same thing is shown in a different patterns here. This is normal. This is increased plasma volume. This will give you a false interpretation of anemia. Now here you can see the person will have an increased PEG cell volume because of a dehydration, and this will give you a false negative report. That person is having a normal hemoglobin, increased hematocrit. While here the total blood is less, where plasma volume is parallel with blood. So here PEG cell volume will remain normal, but the total blood volume is reduced. While in a case of a chronic anemia, you can see the RBC mass is reduced and a plasma volume is increased, but the total blood volume is not increased. While here the total blood volume is increased, while in this too the total blood volume is decreased. Here it is because of a blood loss, here it is because of a fluid loss. So here the RBC mass remains normal. See, in all these three conditions, RBC mass is normal, while here the RBC mass is normal, but the total blood volume has decreased, and this will be diagnosed as anemia. And this will be also diagnosed as chronic anemia, because here the RBC mass is less and hematocrit is less. While here hematocrit has not changed, here hematocrit has increased, here hematocrit is relatively decreased. So these two conditions will have a low hematocrit, but here the plasma volume is increased, while here the plasma volume has increased because of lack of blood mass, or we call RBC mass. So do look at all these conditions. So you have to compare and you have to calculate that hematocrit is fitting with what we have given, a thumb rule, that RBC count multiplied by 3 will give you hemoglobin. 5 multiplied by 3 hemoglobin. Hemoglobin multiplied by 3 gives you hematocrit. So in these conditions, that will be very helpful to identify volume change, blood loss, or because of a dehydration or volume overloads, or because of a decreased RBC mass in a case of a chronic anemia. Now this is a diagram which shows you the common varieties of different types of anemia you come across. We come across the most common iron deficiency anemia, B12 and folic acid deficiency anemia. If you come across because of a bone marrow failure, so we call that as a aplastic anemia or a bone marrow failure anemias. If it is because of the formation of RBC and hemoglobin, it is very commonly because of chronic disorders like CKD, or because of hemoglobin getting lost, RBC getting lost. We call as a chronic blood loss or an acute blood loss, and in an acute blood loss can be an external or internal, or destruction of an RBC early, we call as a hemolytic anemias. So these are chronic disorders, these are blood loss, hemolytic anemias, aplastic anemias, and deficiency anemias. So these are all the different groups. So you can put them into different group: nutritional anemia, chronic blood loss, hemolysis, production problems, and chronic disorders. So decreased production, classical example, hyperproliferative or a bone marrow failure, you can put into an aplastic anemias group. Increased destruction, hemolytic anemias. Loss of red blood cells, that is we call as blood loss, acute or chronic blood loss, and in acute, external and internal. In deficiency anemia, the classical three example, iron deficiency, B12 and folic acid deficiency, these together are given a name, megaloblastic anemias. Or because of chronic disease, there is deficiency of what we call as a erythropoietin, which cannot stimulate the marrow, and there is a decreased production. Classical example is CKD. Also in case of a chronic malignancy, collagen disorder, HIV, etc., there is a decreased production at the level of the bone marrow, or sometimes you can't identify the etiology or there are multiple etiologies. So these are all the different groups you can divide. Now, if you look at the classification wise, anemia can be classified according to the morphology, that is microcytic, macrocytic or normocytic. Functional classification wise, hypoproliferative, or we call as hypocellular, normocellular or hypercellular. Severity wise, mild, moderate and severe depending upon the hemoglobin concentration. Etiology wise, deficiency anemias, hemolytic anemias, chronic blood loss, chronic disease, or you can call bone marrow failures, etc. Depending upon the onset, acute or chronic. Now, there are different many ways of classifying them depending upon MCV and hemoglobin concentration. That is we call as a microcytic normochromic or microcytic hypochromic, normocytic normochromic or normocytic hypochromic, macrocytic hypochromic, etc. These are all the different words which are being utilized. The commonest microcytic anemias are iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia and anemia of chronic disease. These are the three most common causes. You can have another condition also, we can be microcytic. I'm not going into detail regarding all those different groups. Macrocytic, the most common variety is B12 and folic acid deficiency. Another common is because of excessive alcohol intake, chronic liver disease and myelodysplastic syndromes. That will be macrocytic anemia. While less common, not very common, hemolytic anemias, myeloma and bone marrow disorders. So those can also, and also in case of hypothyroidism. But we always look for a B12, folic acid, chronic liver disease, alcohol and myelodysplastic syndromes in a macrocytic anemia. Functional anemia classification is increased loss like acute hemorrhage or chronic blood loss. In acute, we put them into two big groups, external and internal blood loss. In increased destruction because of hemolytic anemias group, which can be we call as an external environments or acquired groups, which are very common. We call immune hemolytic anemias and non-immune hemolytic anemias because of membrane deficiency. Classical example, sickle cell, G6PD deficiency, etc., enzyme deficiency, and because of hemoglobinopathies like thalassemia group. So these are all the different groups we call as a hemolytic anemia, where there is an increased destruction of an RBC and premature destruction of an RBC, and because of a decreased production at the level of a marrow because of a abnormal marrow like myelodysplastic syndromes, metastasis in a marrow, or leukemic infiltration in a marrow, or infiltration because of other disorders, and normal marrow because of deficiency anemias, disease of anemia because of chronic disease, and anemia because of renal failure, particularly CKD. These are all the different slides, then later on you can undergo. So I will be keeping these slides. You can grade them according to the mild, moderate and severe. Some people grade them into mild, moderate, severe and very severe. This is WHO grading. Mild is less than 10, moderate is between 7 to 10 and severe is below 7, and if it is below 4 usually they call very severe. This is according to blood loss, impaired production and increased destruction. This is classification of hemolytic anemia, hereditary and acquired, intracorpuscular or extracorpuscular, or we call internal and external causes. Internal causes, external causes. Enzyme defects, hemoglobinopathies, membrane abnormalities and extrinsic factors. So depending upon that, you can divide. And now we come to what we call as main important part is reading your CBC, and then accordingly you put them into a big groups. So in a CBC, suppose if person has got anemia, that will be common in all varieties. Hematocrit is decreased, that will be also there almost in majority of the things, and it will be more decreased in a case of a blood loss, chronic blood loss, acute blood loss. Also in a case of a person with a severe anemia, in all those conditions hematocrit will be markedly low, and red cell count will be also diminished. When all these three are diminished, we label them as anemias. Now in this anemia, first thing, look at the retic count, which will help you to differentiate between two big groups. One group where retic count is increased, there are two conditions. One, hemolytic anemias and bone marrow failure. So look at those two groups. If RBC count, retic count is more than 2.5, if retic count is more than 2.5, look at the marrow. But before you look at the marrow, look at the total count, differential count, and platelet count. So if person has got pancytopenia, anemia, thrombocytopenia, and leukopenia, suspect bone marrow failure. Straightforward, go for a bone marrow failure groups. So do look at that particular bone marrow failure groups. Now if suppose retic count is high and WBC and platelet count is normal, think in terms of hemolytic anemias. Now additional clue clinically in case of hemolytic anemias: mild jaundice, hepatosplenomegaly, recurrent episodes, strong family history, person gives a history of recurrent blood transfusion required for treatment of the disease. All those goes in favor of a hemolytic anemias. And once you suspect hemolytic anemia, the simple most test, one is we call as a Coombs test, direct Coombs test, and indirect test, which will help you to identify the immune mediated hemolytic anemias, acquired or maybe what we call as other groups. So immune mediated hemolytic anemias will be identified by doing a Coombs test. If you are suspecting a person is having hemoglobinopathies, you will have to go for electrophoresis. If you are suspecting what we call as spherocytosis, then you will have to do osmotic fragility test. If you are suspecting PNH, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, then you might go for acid hemolysis. If you are suspecting other immune mediated hemolytic anemias, you can go for cold agglutinins or a warm agglutinins. If you are suspecting microangiopathic thrombocytopenic anemias, then you will have to look for DIC, that is D-dimer studies, etc. Or you can look for coagulopathies. So these are all the different conditions which can produce increased retic count, one big group, hemolytic anemias. And in this hemolytic anemias, RBC count will be low, hemoglobin will be low, hematocrit will be low, but total count and platelet count may be normal, except in a DIC where platelet count and WBC count may be also reduced. While if all the three are reduced, do look for what we call as a myeloproliferative disorders. And in case of a myeloproliferative disorders, again we have got the two big groups. One, because of a basic disorders of a bone marrow, where you get a hypocellular marrow, or you get a myelofibrosis in a bone marrow aspiration or bone marrow biopsy. You will get a bone marrow replaced by fibrous tissue, and almost it is a hypocellular, or almost you don't see a cellular material. While in a case where there is no stimulation of marrow, like in a chronic disease, you will have a hypocellular marrow. So that will be this particular group. We call as a chronic renal disease, hypothyroidism, chronic liver disease, etc. In these groups, you will have hypocellular marrow. While if you get a retic count less, retic count less, then it can be microcytic hypochromic, it can be macrocytic hypochromic or normocytic hypochromic. If it is microcytic, you have to differentiate between iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia, sideroblastic, and certain chronic infections. Now, basically, you have to differentiate between two big groups, iron deficiency, thalassemia, and chronic infections. For that, if you do a iron studies, it becomes a very, very useful thing to identify between all the three groups. We'll be showing you a slide as we go through. While if it is a macrocyte, MCV is more than 100 femtoliters. Usually we say 120 or so. You put them into a megaloblastic groups. And this megaloblastic, two most common, folic acid deficiency and B12 deficiency. And along with the B12 deficiency, there is one variety we call as a pernicious anemia. And to rule out a pernicious anemia, always take a history. If a person has undergone some surgery, strong family history, person has gastric carcinoma, even sometimes the person who is on a long-term treatment of proton pump inhibitors, they can also develop a B12 deficiency. And to rule out a pernicious anemia, you will have to do a Schilling test. Now, if it is a normochromic, normocytic hypochromic anemias, then try to look for all these conditions, which can be normoblastic, or we call normochromic, normocytic anemia, chronic renal disease, hypothyroidism, chronic liver disease, maybe because of some drugs, etc. So this is in general, if you follow this particular, you will be able to identify good number of times all those conditions. And as far as a blood loss is concerned, very easy to identify by a good clinical history, And then you might require investigations like upper GI endoscopy, lower GI endoscopy, etc. to find out a site of a blood loss, or even an abdominal ultrasound to find out a portal hypertension. Okay, clear? So same thing given here, retic count more, two groups, acute hemorrhage, or we call blood loss, hemolysis, and decreased retic count, decreased or ineffective RBC production, three groups, microcytic, normocytic, macrocytic. Microcytic iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia, two major, and then look for a chronic anemias group, anemia of chronic inflammation group. While normocytic, very frequently because of aplastic anemias, CKD, then infections, myeloproliferative disorders, anemia of chronic inflammation, same here. It can be microcytic, it can be normochromic. But macrocytic, two major, B12 deficiency and folic acid deficiency. And once in a while, you can come across in a myelodysplastic syndromes. You can have a megaloblastic anemia, and sometimes in a chronic liver disease. Do keep it in mind. We'll have to look for those particular groups. Now in India, the most commonest anemia you will come across is iron deficiency anemia. Second common is B12 or folic acid deficiency anemia, that is megaloblastic anemia. One of the most common cause of iron deficiency anemia is internal chronic blood loss. Very rarely you will come across an iron deficiency anemia because of a external blood loss, not very common, but because of an external massive blood loss, you have got a total blood volume being low, not iron deficiency. So that does not go into a group where you get an iron deficiency anemia because of acute large quantity of a blood loss. It will be producing hemorrhagic shock rather than iron deficiency anemia. Another very common group you can see sometime in your everyday practice is a chronic disorders or chronic inflammatory disorders, where you can have a microcytic hypochromic or normocytic hypochromic anemia. And once in a while, in some disease also you can have a megaloblastic anemia. And in that you come across CKD as the most common. Another common is chronic liver disease, then malignancy, and some of the chronic infection groups like rheumatoid arthritis, collagen disorders, HIV, etc. Not very common, but you can come across a person who comes to you with repeated episodes, strong family history, hepatosplenomegaly, recurrent jaundice, mild jaundice, requires recurrent blood transfusions, suspect hemolytic anemias. Now, as far as extravascular hemolysis is concerned, it is very frequently because of immune mediated, while intravascular is very frequently because of enzyme deficiency or hemoglobinopathies. So, just you have to work out accordingly. And we have already told you in a case of aplastic anemia, the most common way of presentation is pancytopenia. So, if any person who comes to you with a pancytopenia, and along with that, invariably person will have a splenomegaly. Splenomegaly will be a very common feature in that because spleen becomes the secondary site for hematopoiesis. And in that case, you will have to do a bone marrow examination. And if a bone marrow shows hypocellular or bone marrow is replaced by a fibrous tissue, it goes in favor of a bone marrow disorders, or we put them into a group called aplastic anemia. And there is one group which is a part of a aplastic anemia group we call as a myeloproliferative disorders. And then depending upon what you are suspecting, accordingly you can go for what we call as a genetic study also. We call JAK study, gene studies. And last group we put them is unexplained or unknown etiology. Good number of time it does not fit classically in all, or it may be a combination of iron deficiency with mild aplastic or combination of iron deficiency with chronic disorders, etc. All those permutation combination can be there. In a case of iron deficiency anemia, there are three stages we call it a pre-latent stage, where bone marrow iron is reduced and serum ferritin is reduced, but clinically you don't have a symptoms and signs. You don't have symptoms. But when it becomes latent, bone marrow iron is almost absent. Serum ferritin is markedly reduced. Transferrin is also reduced. And erythrocyte porphyrin is increased. Serum transferrin receptors are increased. Reticulocyte counts is decreased. Hemoglobin is normal. In this stage, it will get reduced once the person develops clinically anemia. And once he starts developing clinically anemia, there will be pallor. Person may have a history of pica. There will be epithelial changes in the form of a glossitis, angular stomatitis. Person can have a Plummer-Vinson syndrome or Peter-Kelly syndrome. That is, person will have a dysphagia, etc. While in a latent stage, person will have only symptoms because of decreased oxygen supply, that is fatigue, weakness, leg cramps, etc. While in stage 3, that is we call clinical anemia, you will start having all the classical symptoms and signs of anemia. So in iron deficiency anemia, these are all the different symptoms and signs we have already mentioned many times, but some of the things are very peculiar. Pica, dysphagia, nails are very typical, that is koilonychia, platynachia, broken or we call fragile nails. Then hair loss may be there. In some cases you can have a splenomegaly, etc. Go through all these symptoms which we have already mentioned. So fatigue, tiredness, shortness of breath, depression, hair loss, dizziness, then restless leg syndrome, fatigues, frequent headaches, increased sensitivity to cold, brittle nails, koilonychia. All these are very, very common, and including even Plummer-Vinson and pica. Koilonychia, chelosis, Plummer-Vinson, glossitis, pallor, and iron level will reduce in marrow as well as in blood. So all this koilonychia, pallors, etc. you will get very frequently in iron deficiency anemia. These are all angular stomatitis, koilonychia, smooth tongue, we call smooth bald tongue, loss of hairs, pallor, sclera is absolutely pale, even conjunctiva is pale. You will have typical features, pallor. You can have even a pedal edema because of increased blood volume, and secondary also very frequently iron deficiency will be associated with hypoproteinemia. So all these features will be there together. You can have even tachycardia. So anemia, chelosis, glossitis, koilonychia, smooth bald tongue, dysphagia, Patterson-Kelly or Plummer-Vinson syndrome. So all those things can be seen. We are lot of diagrams are there. You can go through that. Koilonychia, brittle nails, and in a children very frequently. Pica is a very common feature. Also, sometimes you can see in a adult also. It is more common in children. So abnormal eating habits, which normally a human being does not eat. Average requirement is 1 milligram per day. Particularly in a menstruating female, your requirement may go high. And in a growing children, the requirement is little more than average adult. Diagnosis is very simple. We already mentioned that in a case of a pre-latent and latent, hemoglobin is normal. MCV is normal, but MCV will become low, hemoglobin will be low, TIBC will be increased in latent as well as iron deficiency anemia. Ferritin level will be low in pre-latent, latent as well as iron deficiency anemia. TIBC will be increased in case of iron deficiency anemia, while in a latent variety TIBC will be also affected, but in a case of a pre-latent TIBC may not be affected. So this is rough method of identifying the different groups, pre-latent, latent and iron deficiency. To make it very simple, in iron deficiency, clinical symptoms and signs will be very, very clear, and you will have a low hemoglobin, low MCV, low serum ferritin, transferrin saturation will be also decreased. Only TIBC will be elevated, all other will be low. While in case of a latent variety, hemoglobin and MCV will be normal, while TIBC will be increased, ferritin will be low, transferrin saturation will be low, and marrow iron will be totally absent. While in case of a pre-latent, ferritin will be low, transferrin saturation will be normal, TIBC will be also normal, marrow iron will be reduced, iron absorption capacity will be increased, but hemoglobin and MCV will be normal. So you can identify sometimes a pre-latent and latent if you do a iron study, but very difficult. No one will go for that. So these are all the different, and to identify a chronic blood loss, you will have to do stool examination for worm infestation and occult blood. To find out the site, you will have to go for a upper GI endoscopy or a lower GI endoscopy. And after doing iron study, you will be doing this particular. And if you have got retic count less than 2.5, you can also go for a bone marrow examination to rule out a bone marrow infiltration or bone marrow disorders, basic primary bone marrow disorders. This is a small diagram showing you that first there is a decrease in the ferritin level, then the iron saturation is reduced, and last to be affected is MCV, hemoglobin and hematocrit, in a full-blown iron deficiency anemia. So that is how it happens. We have already shown you. These are all the things which are there. You can see MCV, MCH, MCHC, and all those are reduced, while TIBC is increased. Transferrin, ferritin is also reduced. RDW will be towards the higher side. Reticulocyte count will be low. It will not be high. Platelet count may be low. WBC count may be low. And clinically, or we call on a smear, you will have hypochromic microcytic anemia. And you will also see anisocytosis and poikilocytosis, means abnormal shape and abnormal size. So typically you will have microcytic hypochromic anemia. RDW is usually close to normal. Reticulocyte count is low. Serum ferritin is low. Only TIBC is increased. Serum iron level is low. Bone marrow iron is almost absent. Almost absent. And as soon as you give an iron treatment, the response is excellent. Except person has got iron absorption problem from GI tract. This is that difference. I'll be going to the second slide. Here there is a difference of iron deficiency, chronic inflammation, thalassemia, major, minor, lead poisoning, sideroblastic, etc. is given in all the three. Okay, we can go through this slide. You can see here, in an iron deficiency, TIBC is increased, while both, that is serum iron and ferritin level, are reduced. In a chronic inflammation, ferritin is increased, but these two, that is serum iron and TIBC, are low. While in thalassemia major and minor, what we say that TIBC will be low. TIBC will be low. While in thalassemia major, because of iron overload, serum iron level will be elevated. While in a minor, usually we don't come across serum iron overloads. So when you do an iron study and if the iron levels are high, do suspect serum iron overload. And it is very frequently because of a repeated blood transfusion, repeated BT. And in a sideroblastic anemia, serum iron level is high because again this is a storage disorder. And you get a storage disorder in sideroblastic as well as a thalassemia major. So in both these conditions, serum iron level will be high. And if you look here in ferritin level, ferritin in thalassemia major is normal, while in case of a sideroblastic anemia, ferritin level is high. So this becomes a very important thing. And in a peripheral smear, we will see a ring sideroblast, while in a case of a thalassemia major, you will see a target cells and increased reticulocytosis. You will have a very high reticulocyte count. So if you see a reticulocyte count very high with microcytic hypochromic anemia, do suspect thalassemia major. And by hemoglobinopathies, if you want to rule out hemoglobinopathies, you want to identify thalassemia major or minor or other varieties of hemoglobinopathies, then you will have to go for electrophoresis, where fetal hemoglobin and HbA2 will be elevated. So same thing shown here. In iron deficiency, ferritin is low, TIBC is high, and iron level is low. Another feature is this, what we call as a TIBC to that ratio will be less than, because TIBC is increased, so the ratio will be less than 18. In thalassemia, ferritin is normal, TIBC is normal, iron level will be high, particularly in a thalassemia major. And you will have a basophil stippling and you will have a target cells. In anemia of a chronic inflammatory disease, ferritin will be normal, sometime elevated. TIBC will be low because of chronic inflammation. Iron level will be low. So the difference between iron deficiency and chronic inflammation is TIBC. TIBC will be reduced in case of a anemia of a chronic inflammation. This will be same like iron deficiency anemia. In sideroblastic, iron level will be high, ferritin will be high, while TIBC will be normal, and you will get a ring sideroblast. So this is a very useful slide to differentiate iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia, sideroblastic anemia, and anemia of chronic inflammatory disorders. or anemia of chronic disease, and that will produce microcytic hypochromic anemia. I'll just pass through this. You can undergo this particular slide at your leisure time. So I'm not going into detail regarding that particular. This is same slide shown in microcytic anemias. What you can do, if reticulocyte count is increased, then in that particular, to rule out the microcytic hypochromic anemias, you will have to reassess to rule out red cell abnormality and hemolytic anemias. So look at the slide again, look at the peripheral smear, and if you are suspecting hemolytic anemia, look at the LDH level, look at splenomegaly, look in peripheral smear for abnormal RBC, look at elevation of bilirubin, that is presence of jaundice, where indirect bilirubin will be high, and peripheral smear examination will give you a lot of idea regarding RBC abnormality and type of hemolytic anemias. And there will be low heptoglobins and elevated LDH level. So if you suspect that, you will have to go for that. And if you are suspecting thalassemia minor, then you will have to go for electrophoresis. But if retic count is low, then differentiate iron deficiency, chronic disease, beta thalassemia and sideroblastic anemia. I've already shown you the slide before this slide. So have a look at that particular things. So that is all regarding what we call as the iron deficiency anemia and the condition which produces microcytic hypochromic anemias. Determine the cause, and what you require is replacement. So normalize the hemoglobin level, replenish the iron stores, and manage the specific disease, that is underlying cause. Find out the underlying cause. What is the cause of that iron deficiency? And try to treat that simultaneously. And lifestyle modification is also required, that is dietary advice. Very, very important. So correction of iron deficiency is done by oral treatment, by giving drugs and by modifying the diet which is rich in iron, like giving pulses, leafy vegetables, jaggery, brinjal, all those are rich in iron. So whatever diet which is rich in iron can be taken. Drugs which are easily absorbable. Ferrous sulfates is the best absorbable salt. Give in an adequate quantity. If not tolerated orally, or if there is an defects in absorption because of partial gastrectomy or gastric carcinoma, or person has got achlorhydria like pernicious anemia, etc., or person has undergone bypass because of bariatric surgery. In those conditions, oral will not be absorbed. Then in that case, either you will give intramuscular or intravenous, and that will be the treatment. And then always look at the underlying cause and treat the underlying disease. Whatever, if it is a worm infestation, treat worm infestation. If there is a chronic blood loss, you will have to treat that basic conditions. So oral supplements, dietary sources, ferrous sulfate is the best salts. If person has got a gastric distress or cannot tolerate, IV is very, very good, and use the IV products which are like iron sucrose or iron dextran or ferric gluconate, etc. They are costly but less dangerous. They do not produce anaphylaxis. In a person with a severe iron deficiency anemia, to reduce hypoxia, PEG cell transfusion can be given. In a worm infestation, mebendazole or parental or albendazole can be utilized. If you want to calculate the total iron dose, there is a formula: body weight in kilogram multiplied by 2.3 multiplied by normal hemoglobin we take as 15 minus patient hemoglobin. This is iron required plus 1000 milligram for storage, and 500 milligram at a time or repeated small doses you can give. This total, whatever you calculate, total amount you can give in a small doses, or some people also gives in one shot. Try to avoid that. So these are the different salts which will give you this much amount of iron. So ferric gluconate 125, and highest is given by ferric carboxy maltose, but this is quite costly. So depending upon the affording person, you can use it. And these are all those different salts. What are the costs? These are very expensive. Carboxy maltose is very expensive. It gives lot of iron, but it is very expensive. The only advantage of all this salt is less chance of anaphylaxis. So this is the treatment in summary. You can go through your leisure time. Complication of iron deficiency anemia: maternal complication, fetal complications, premature delivery, low birth weight, particularly in a pregnancy. Learning disability, psychomotor function will be delayed. Reduced work capacity, impaired immunity, so repeated infections are very common. The person will have a intolerance to cold, may be associated with pica, which can give rise to other disorders, etc. Now we go to the second disorders, we call it the macrocytic anemia, or one of the most common cause of macrocytic anemia is megaloblastic anemia, that is B12 and folic acid deficiency. The second big group which produces macrocytic anemia we call non-megaloblastic anemias, that is liver disease and chronic alcoholism. So this comes topmost on the list. Then comes the second big group we call as hemoglobinopathies. Sometimes in hemoglobinopathies also you can get a non-megaloblastic anemia. Then metabolic disorders, hypothyroidism, bone marrow disorders like myelodystrophy, drugs, particularly anticonvulsant drugs, can also produce. These are all the different conditions which can produce B12 deficiency: pregnancy, lactation, puberty, hyperthyroidism, disseminated malignancy, then pernicious anemia, partial gastrectomy, complete gastrectomy, malabsorption syndromes, bacterial overgrowth, then lymphomas, systemic sclerosis, competitive inhibitions, etc. This is folic acid deficiency, poor intake of vegetables, celiac disease, then increased demand during pregnancy, hemolytic anemias, then anticonvulsant drugs like phenytoin sodium, cytotoxic drugs like methotrexate because they produce folic acid deficiency, oral contraceptive pills. These are some of the causes of folate deficiency. In a pernicious anemia, you will find out a gene defect like HLA-B27 or a B7, DW2, DR2, etc. And you will have an antibody positive almost in 85% of the people. Antiparietal antibody will be positive. Intrinsic factor antibody will be positive in 55 to 70% of the group of people. And sometimes also you find an antithyroid antibody also positive, being a common group of autoimmune disorders. So this will be, and there will be a strong family history available in a pernicious anemia. Clinical symptoms nearly remain same as other anemias, common anemia symptoms. But there are few things which are very peculiar. If a person develops a B12 deficiency, neurological manifestations are very commonly seen, where person can come to you with a peripheral neuropathy to a subacute combined degeneration of a spinal cord, where person will have a we call Romberg sign positive sensory ataxia, that or we call spinal ataxia or sensory ataxia, and person can have a frequent falls. As far as a B12 and folic acid deficiency is concerned, because of GI tract symptoms, loss of appetite, glossitis, we call as a red sore tongue. It is absolutely cherry red color, and there is a soreness of the tongue. And person can get very frequently diarrhea or constipation, depending upon what is predominant. So in a case of a megaloblastic anemias, you can have some symptoms which are very peculiar: malaise, dyspnea, paresthesia. This is very common in B12 deficiency. Sore mouth in both varieties, weight loss, skin pigmentation, graying of the hair, smooth tongue, angular stomatitis, vitiligo, etc. is very commonly seen. And person can also have a impotency, depression, hallucination, visual disturbances, skin pigmentation, heart failure, and very frequently person will have a recurrent infection, pyrexias. Neurological symptoms and signs are very common in a B12 deficiency, like peripheral neuropathy, subacute combined degeneration, and even sometimes can have a dementia and optic atrophy, which is due to the involvement of the cranial nerves and cerebral cortex. Once in a while, person can also present as an autonomic neuropathy in the form of a postural hypotension, and this is very commonly seen with a B12 deficiency. So if person comes to you with a peripheral neuropathy and severe anemia and on a peripheral smear, it shows you a megaloblast, suspect B12 deficiency. Investigation required are very simple, like all other anemias. CBC is very important, and in CBC you will see macrocytic hypochromic anemia. Poikilocytosis very commonly seen. You will see red cell fragmentations. You will see neutrophils being hyper segmented. So you will see hyper segmented neutrophils, which is more in favor of a megaloblastic anemias. And leukocyte count will be low, reticulocyte count will be low, and platelet count will be also low. So good number of time you get a pancytopenia, and secondarily you will have a bone marrow failure because of megaloblastic anemia. So in a bone marrow, the person will have initially increased cellularity, and later on you can have a bone marrow failure part. Serum ferritin level will be elevated and LDH level may be elevated. If you want to find out the difference between B12 and a folic acid deficiency, megaloblast will be seen in both. Peripheral smear will be almost nearly same. Neurological symptoms and signs will be seen mainly in case of a B12 deficiency. B12 level will be low in B12, while folic acid level will be low in case of a folic acid deficiency. Response to B12 will be very classical in a B12 deficiency. B12 absorption test, that is Schilling test, will be abnormal in a B12 deficiency, and intrinsic factor deficiency will be also seen very frequently, that is pernicious anemia will result into B12 deficiency more common than in case of a folic acid deficiency. Pernicious anemia will not give rise to a folic acid deficiency, it will give rise to B12 deficiency. So almost we have covered up everything. These are all the different tests which are being done in a case of what we call as a megaloblastic anemia. This is a part of a Schilling test. I am not going into detail. It is done if you find B12 deficiency, and if there is a strong family history, you want to rule out a pernicious anemia, you should go for Schilling test. Treatment wise, B12 replacement along with a folic acid replacement also should be done. And whenever folic acid is being replaced, look for hypokalemia in severe cases, because very frequently they will develop hypokalemia. So whenever you are giving B12 and folic acid, look for hypokalemia, one of the complications. And the most common material which is being utilized is hydroxycobalamin, or you can give oral supplement also. And whenever you are giving a B12, always replace potassium simultaneously if required. Also iron deficiency is quite common, so also look for iron deficiency anemia associated with that. So look for all these things. I'm skipping over what are the doses you require. Nothing is fixed, but depending upon the clinical picture, you can replace those particular things. Now, megaloblastic, we have told you that there are two big groups, megaloblastic and non-megaloblastic. We have already discussed regarding a megaloblastic, now regarding a non-megaloblastic. If reticulocyte count is increased, look for hemolytic anemia and blood loss. And if reticulocyte count is normal or decreased, look for alcohol, look for hypothyroidism, and look for liver disease. Liver, alcohol, and hypothyroidism. They may be one of the cause for non-megaloblastic macrocytic hypochromic anemias, where reticulocyte count is reduced. So these are the combination, permutation combination of normocytes, microcytes, and macrocytes with normal red RDW and with increased RDW. I'm not going into detail of that part. This is also same MCV and RDW combinations. What are the possibilities? You can utilize that. It may be helpful in some of the conditions. So you can look for all those things. Now we go for what we call as a blood loss. Usually in a blood loss, we don't require any specific investigation, particularly in a person with an acute blood loss. Because in an acute blood loss, the history is very short. Very frequently, person will come to you with a external or internal blood loss. And because of a massive blood loss, person will come to you with a hypotension and symptom signs of a hypovolemic shock. And if a person has got an internal blood loss, any person with a pain in abdomen, chest pain, fever, etc., comes to you with most common cause of a massive internal blood loss is abdominal conditions. And if there is an abdominal tenderness, distension of abdomen, peristalsis are feeble, and person has got shock stage, and clinically person is showing you a symptom signs of hypoxia and hemoglobin estimation is low, do try to rule out internal blood loss. External blood loss is very easy to identify because person will give you a history of hemoptysis, epistaxis, hematemesis, melena, hematochezia, etc., metromenorrhagia, all those things history will be given. But if a person who comes to with a chronic blood loss, or we call as a slow blood loss, particularly in the form of melena, or person has got an occult bleeding gradually from lower GI tract or from upper GI tract. In a case of upper GI tract, melena is a common symptom. Melena is the most common symptom. And in case of a lower GI tract, chronic blood loss, it is in the form of a occult bleeding, which you cannot detect by a routine stool examination. You will have to go for a occult blood test. If that is positive, you will have to do a colonoscopy. And if a person is having a melena, or person is giving a past history of hematemesis, etc., then upper GI tract endoscopy will be absolutely necessary. So you try to find out whether it is an external or internal blood loss, it is acute or chronic, and try to identify it is because of blood loss or not. And very frequently in a blood loss, it is a normocytic hypochromic anemia. Hemoptysis, hematochezia, microcytic iron deficiency anemia you will see in a case of a chronic blood loss. So acute blood loss, chronic blood loss, you try to identify by clinical and by doing investigations. Acute blood loss, usually there will be no increase in the reticulocyte count and signs of hypovolemia. In a subacute blood loss, slight increase in retic count, but in a chronic blood loss, typical picture of iron deficiency anemia will be there. So chronic blood loss can be one of the cause for iron deficiency anemia. Management wise, in an acute blood loss, it will depend upon the etiology. So in an acute blood loss, usually PEG cell will be required to bring back the hemodynamics. If PEG cell is not available, colloids. Then you can come across a similar group which is quite common, which is sometimes not being diagnosed, not being investigated properly. We call anemia of chronic disease or anemia because of chronic inflammation like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, SLE, rheumatoid arthritis, long-term chronic infections, CKD, liver disease, particularly like cirrhosis, hypothyroidism, tuberculosis, HIV, infective endocarditis. All these are multiple diseases. Malignancy. In all these diseases you can have anemia, but they will not respond to your iron replacement. So whenever a person in whom you are giving an iron replacement and person hemoglobin is not improving, there are 2 or 3 possibilities you will have to keep it in mind. One, person in spite of a good replacement of iron, if still hemoglobin is not coming up. One condition, chronic blood loss. Second, maybe a person is having a chronic disease, or we call anemia of chronic disease or anemia of chronic inflammations. Third, person is not taking medicines properly, or person is having a GI tract disorders which are not allowing the iron to be absorbed nicely. So do look at all these possibilities when you are giving an iron replacement after making a diagnosis of iron deficiency anemia, and if the person is not responding. And last, after ruling out all this, still if a person is not responding and retic count is still low, do rule out bone marrow failure. So chronic disorders like CKD, cancer, liver disease, chronic infections like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, tuberculosis, HIV, infective endocarditis, even in case of a hypothyroidism, etc. You should try to look for a chronic causes. I'm skipping over all this. This is a very big topic. So I'm skipping over all this chronic anemias group, and it will be invariably producing normochromic, normocytic anemia. And in these conditions, usually the retic count will be low and you will have a hypocellular marrow. Hypocellular marrow. In a sideroblastic anemia, you will have to replace pyridoxine, folic acid, and other supplements. Iron may not be required because already the person is having an iron overload. So you will have to give pyridoxine, folic acid, that is B12s. You will have to give and try to rule out the basic etiology. Withdraw the causative drugs which is producing sideroblastic anemias. And in a case of a chronic disease, try to treat the underlying conditions. And person might require erythropoietin, particularly in a person with a CKD. In that condition, you might require erythropoietin. Now we come across another group we call as normocytic, normochromic, or normocytic hypochromic anemias, where person is developing anemia because of some groups where retic count is high. Either it is because of hemolytic anemias or because of loss of blood, acute and massive loss of blood. Hemorrhagic anemias means massive blood loss, or because of hemolysis. And in hemolysis, we have already mentioned jaundice, splenomegaly, all those will be present. You will suspect hemolytic. But if no hepatosplenomegaly, no strong family history, lactic acid is normal, heptoglobin is normal, and person gives you a history of external or internal blood loss, suspect hemorrhagic anemias. If RBC production is reduced, already we have mentioned before this. We have mentioned this particular group. This group. So that will be the group which will be producing normocytic anemias. So that is renal disease, liver disease, hypothyroidism, then myelodysplastic syndromes, all those groups, and anemia of chronic disease. Hemolytic anemias, we already told you, strong family history, recurrent episodes, maybe an acquired conditions are immunological or non-immunologicals. Recurrent episodes of anemia, jaundice, splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, gallstones are very frequent. Chipmunk face, bone deformities. Retic count will be very high and there will be abnormal RBC on a peripheral blood smear. Hemoglobin urea will be present, and good number of times they can also present with an AKI, and free hemoglobin will be also detected in blood. You will have an increased urobilinogen, bile pigments will be present in urine. Hemoglobinemia, reduced heptoglobins, LDH level will be elevated, and bone marrow biopsy will tell you that it is a hypercellular marrow. And electrophoresis will give you an idea regarding the type of hemoglobins, that is hemoglobinopathies. And hemolytic anemia can be because of intravascular causes or because of extravascular causes. Good number of time extravascular causes are acquired group, while intravascular causes are very frequently mainly because of genetic causes and sometimes because of acquired group. Very few conditions are intravascular which are acquired groups. We are not going into detail regarding all these groups. I am skipping over because then it will become a very long topic. So it can be inherited or acquired. These are inherited groups. These are acquired group, immune, non-immune groups. Everything is being mentioned here. If you are interested, you can go through your leisure times. I've already mentioned that intravascular are more commonly because of what we call as the intravascular hemolysis, and extravascular group is very frequently because of hemoglobinopathies, enzymes, membrane deficiency, which are we call as a hereditary groups. Well, these are intravascular hemolysis are very frequently because of acquired groups, and they are mainly extrinsic groups which will be intravascular, while extravascular hemolysis, that is hemolysis by what we call as a spleen, that will be intrinsic group varieties. Clinical feature, we have repeatedly mentioned that person will have a mild jaundice, all symptom signs of anemia, splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, pigmentary gallstones, dark colored urine, you will have a urobilinogen positive, you will have a bile pigment positive, you will have increased retic count, haptoglobin will be reduced, all those will be the findings. And you will have a changes also in a bone, growth retardation, recurrent infections, etc. So these are all those presentations. Depending upon the severity and onset also, you will have a different presentation. So jaundice, hepatosplenomegaly, fever, abdominal pain, dark colored urine. This is typical chipmunk face, face like this. That's why it is called chipmunk. These are all the general examination findings, physical findings, hemoglobin level, MCV, reticulocyte count will be increased, bilirubin will be increased, LDH will be increased, heptoglobin will be reduced, etc. So these are those typical findings. We'll be going through all those things, and in a peripheral smear you will get abnormal cells. That is, you will have a poikilocytosis, anisocytosis. And these are all the things what you will be looking at the hemolytic anemias. What is present? All those in spherocytes, ellipsocytes, these are all different types of RBC you will see in a peripheral smear. This is difference between intravascular and extravascular hemolysis. I am not going into detail regarding that. This is again that hemolytic anemias, how you try to differentiate by peripheral smear. Abnormal red cells, spherocytes, then fragmentation, bite cells, blister cells, Haynes, body, all those things. This is again the same slide showing in different patterns. What are the different types of cells you will see in a peripheral blood smear. Hence, peripheral blood smear becomes a very, very important thing in diagnosis of what we call as hemolytic anemias group. Good number of condition can be suspected in that particular group. So, always ask a question. All RBC are of same size. All RBC are of discoid size. Color of RBC. Then they are multicolored or not. Is there any inclusion? Is there any parasites? Is leukocytes normal? Differential count is normal. Platelet count is normal. Try to look for all those things together. And that is how you look at the peripheral smear. You look at the shape. You look at the color. If you got a different types of color, you will call that as anisocytosis. And if different shapes, poikilocytosis. And look at the immature cells also. You will try to look at all those things. So look at the RBC. This will be discussing absolutely separately in a peripheral smear. There are a lot of things you can identify by peripheral smear. Anisocytosis, poikilocytosis is a very common feature in a case of a hemolytic anemias. Look at polychromasia, whether it is a normocyte, microcytes, macrocytes, rouleau formation, agglutinations, etc. Agglutination will be very commonly in a immune mediated hemolytic anemias. You will see lot of agglutinations, maybe a cold agglutinations or warm agglutinations, and bone marrow examination. This is on a retic count combination with anemia, stable anemia, hemolytic anemia, pancytopenia, etc. What are the possibilities? You can go through your at leisure time. These are all the different shapes and size of RBC which you can see in a peripheral smear. Small size microcytes, big size macrocytes. If big size with oval shape, oval macrocytes, and if you get a macrocyte with less hemoglobin, we call hypochromic macrocytics. And depending upon the hemoglobin concentration, you will call hypochromic variety. And depending upon the concentration, you give 1 plus to 4 plus. This is severe hypochromic. But if there is a multiple color, it is a polychromasia. And this will be seen very frequently in our reticulocytes. And this is quite commonly seen in a person with what we call as spherocytosis. In a case of a spherocytosis, or also in a case of a thalassemia also. Then different shapes, target cells, spherocytes, ovalocytes, stomatocytes, sickle cell, Burr cell, Trier shapes, cystocytes, helmet cells, acanthocytes, etc. And these are different types of inclusion body, basophil stippling, HJ body or Howell Jolly body, Cabot rings, Pappenheimer bodies, etc. And if you get agglutination, this will be in favor of what we call as immune mediated hemolytic anemias, and you can have a rouleau formation. These are all the different types of RBC you can see in a peripheral smear. You can go through all this at your leisure time. Sealing test, osmotic fragility in a case of a spherocytosis. This sealing test is very frequently done again in a person who you are suspecting sickle cell. Sickle cell. Okay. Then direct Coombs test in a immune mediated varieties. Indirect Coombs test. Then you can go for an X-ray skull. If you get a hair on pin appearance or hair on end appearance, very classical of thalassemia major. You can go for electrophoresis. Now we come to the last group we call as aplastic anemia group or a bone marrow failure group. Very classical finding, pancytopenia. Person will have all symptom signs of anemia. Leukopenia will produce recurrent infections, and platelet will produce, thrombocytopenia will produce bleeding. And invariably they will be very frequently have hepatosplenomegaly for secondary site of hematopoiesis. And good number of time they will also have a lymphadenopathy, particularly if a person has got aplastic anemia secondary due to lymphatic etiology like lymphomas. You will have to go for a bone marrow biopsy, which will give you an idea regarding a bone marrow failure or not. And it will also give you an idea regarding a myeloproliferative disorders or myelodysplastic disorders. These are all the different types of aplastic anemias. It can be autoimmune, toxic, pure red cell aplasia or agranulocytosis, while in a constitutional or we call as an acquired group. These are acquired group. This is constitutional group or genetic group, Fanconi's, then diamond black fans, etc. Or you can have a PNH, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinurias, or myelodysplastic syndromes. And in a myelodysplastic syndrome, you come across polycythemia rubra vera, myelofibrosis, ectogenetic myeloid metaplasia, and myelofibrosis. These are all polycythemia rubra vera and chronic myeloid leukemias. So anemia, thrombocytopenia, and neutropenia is very, very common. And secondary to anemia, thrombocytopenia, and neutropenia, you will get different symptoms and signs. Main important investigation is a pancytopenia with finding of bone marrow failure. And to find out the etiology of a bone marrow failure, you will have to do a B12 study, B12 level, liver function test, folic acid levels. Then you will have to do antibody studies. You will have to do a virology study because viral infection can also produce a damage to the bone marrow, etc. You will have to go for all those things. In a case of a PNH, you can go for a acid test. Aplastic anemia treatment will be identify the cause, if treatable, treat the basic cause. Blood transfusion, antibiotic, immunosuppression test is the main important part to suppress the immune mediated aplastic anemias. And you might require a bone marrow stimulants. There are all what we call as a growth hormone, erythropoietin, and growth hormone stimulators are available. And last is bone marrow transplant. So you can go for those immunosuppressive therapy and androgens and growth factors. And last is the bone marrow transplant. Unexplained anemia, very, very difficult. When it does not fit with all the previous what we have discussed, it will fit with unexplained anemia. So you will have a MCV normal, anemia will be there, retic count will be low, platelet count will be normal, peripheral smear will usually does not show any particular specific feature, serum iron level will be little bit low, TIBC will be normal, iron saturation will be low, B12 level will be normal, folic acid level will be normal, TSH will be normal, CRP is normal, erythropoietin level is not elevated. When you get all these features, we label that it is unexplained anemia. These are all permutation combination with WBC abnormality. Anemia with leukocytosis, suspect bacterial infection, myelodysplasia, parasitic infection. With leukopenia, bone marrow suppression, deficiency anemias. That is folic acid deficiency. Anemia with thrombocytopenia, suspect hypersplenism, B12 deficiency, folic acid deficiency, and bone marrow suppressions. Anemia with thrombocytosis, suspect myelodysplastic syndromes, essential thrombocytosis, iron deficiency anemia, infections. Pancytopenia, suspect aplastic anemia or hypersplenism. Now we come to the summary. That is, if hemoglobin is low, do not start iron straight away. Try to find out the cause of anemia, because all anemia is not iron deficiency anemia. Again, I am repeating, all decreased hemoglobin are not iron deficiency anemia. Always, if possible, if it is not financial problem, don't start iron. Investigate and find out the cause. If retic count is low, hematocrit is low, and hemoglobin is low, yes, now it is anemia. Look at MCV, look at MCH, look at reticulocyte count. If it is high, look for the certain causes, particularly hemolytic anemia and acute blood loss. And if it is low, look at the conditions which is decreasing the reticulocyte count production, chronic disorders, bone marrow failure, those groups, iron deficiency anemia. In all those conditions, reticulocyte count will be low. Look for blood loss, acute, chronic, occult blood loss. Look for hypoproliferative disorders, hemolytic groups. Clinically, you can identify. Look at hemorrhagic conditions. You will be able to differentiate clinically good number of times. In a hypoproliferative disorders, microcytic and macrocytics are very common. In a microcytic, rule out iron deficiency anemia from thalassemia, chronic anemias, and also sideroblastic anemias. In a macrocytic variety, megaloblastic and non-megaloblastic. And in a non-megaloblastic, chronic liver disease, chronic alcoholism, hypothyroidism, etc. Try to rule out that. So in a normoblastic, normocytic anemias, liver, marrow disorders, malignancy, chronic disorders, etc. Peripheral smear is very, very important to identify, particularly in a case of a hemolytic anemias and some other odd conditions also. If the retic count is very high, hemolytic workup should be done, and look for hemoglobin electrophoresis and special test. Here I end my lecture. I hope this will be very, very helpful to you. We'll be discussing on what we call how you approach to the different types of anemia when you come across clinically, how you suspect and how you approach. That will be, we'll be discussing separately. So that particular we'll be discussing as a cases on anemia.